I can't believe it's already time to wait a whole nother year for more. Just as this season of Invincible started on Earth, so too does it end on our little blue marble. And my word, it is quite the ending they left us on, leaving us to wait for a whole nother year. Make sure to get your "Where's Season 5, William" memes ready, folks. Every season finale of Invincible thus far has ended with some huge climactic battle that leaves Earth and/or Mark just in complete shambles, leading to a long and intense recovery the following season. But this time, things are a tiny bit different. And you know what? They goddamn nailed it. From start to finish, this episode had me wondering what the hell was going to happen, how, and when. This silent tension was just slowly building as the minutes of the episode ticked down. And for the final time this season, I seriously mean it, spoiler warning for the finale of Invincible Season 4. If you haven't watched the finale of the show yet, somehow, or Invincible as a whole, please go watch it for yourself. I do not want to ruin this amazing show for anybody. But now, for the last time, for at least another year, let us take a look at Invincible Season 4, Episode 8. Don't leave me hanging here. The episode opens exactly where we all feared it would. Earth. We see the Viltrumites hovering over the planet, and with nothing left to lose, they destroy everything in their path to repay Mark for what he did to their world. Or so we're shown anyway. This episode pulls a bit of a Season 2 opening and shows us something that isn't really happening to our Earth and our Mark. It was just a waking nightmare that Mark was having after the events on Viltrum and not sleeping for a few days. And Mark is understandably stressed the hell out, refusing and likely unable to sleep. Nolan says, and I quote, "There's nothing we can do until we get home." This simple but impactful line just reaffirms that Nolan sees Earth and humankind as his home now, not Viltrum or its people. Not that there's much of Viltrum left, but it's just a nice bow to tie all of this development of his character together. Back on Telescria, we get the Alan scene that was posted to the Invincible YouTube channel, where he becomes the temporary leader of the Coalition of Planets. I saw this great comment on that clip saying how Seth Rogen is usually just a big goofy-ah actor who plays goofy-ah characters. But the comment agreed with the sentiment that Seth Rogen was the perfect choice for Alan. Alan is a big smile and goofy character, but when he's serious or nervous, Seth Rogen just nails that anxiety feeling. That same comment compared Seth Rogen to other actors like Adam Sandler and The Rock in the sense that they are only known for playing one type of character. On the surface, Alan fits the bill for the type of character Seth Rogen is known to play. But even just a bit below the surface, playing the role of Alan shines a light on Seth Rogen's true acting talent. Sure, he's good at playing big smile characters, like I said, but he's more than qualified and more than talented enough to play good, genuine characters who have like anxiety and nervousness and traits that we can all relate to aside from haha big funny. But moving on from that tangent, back on the ship headed to Earth, Zoe tries to strike up a conversation with Mark and Nolan. She comes up with some plans for what they're going to do, some serious and some less so, but the two say absolutely nothing in response and just continue staring out the window. They don't even move or seem to acknowledge that she's even there. But when the captain finally comes over the intercom to tell them that they're entering the solar system, Mark turns around and says, "Finally." And I think I'll just let this next one play.
Oh, so you were listening.
What?
It's ironic, isn't it? Mark is a lot more like his father than he realizes, but it's in none of the terrible ways Mark constantly believed he was. The plan is to drop down to Earth quietly, and Mark is just zipping right down there in a panic. So much for the element of surprise. As Mark flies around on Earth just trying to keep his cool, he finds nothing. No signs of mass destruction or screams of terror, just Earth going about its business. In all honesty, I think it is a lot worse when a character arrives home expecting some catastrophe and they find nothing instead. But they know the threat is still out there and that it's just a matter of time until it emerges. That kind of suspense and silent dramatic buildup can lead to moments of tense uncertainty, and Invincible just freaking nails it. Seriously, even though the action and, the big fights are what Invincible is known for, the actual writing and, the build-up to the conflicts and stuff, they nail that just as much, if not better, than the fights. But Mark finally arrives home to greet his mother and, tell her everything that happened, and, as they're talking, he turns around mid-thought, only to turn back around and see Thrag with his hand around Debbie's neck, ripping her head clean off to exact his revenge. But that's not really what happened. Mark just imagined it because of how afraid he is. To be fair, after what Thrag did last episode and how Mark couldn't even hurt him, I'd be pretty terrified too. Before Mark tells her what happened though, he says that he needs to go and see Eve first, and yeah, I don't exactly blame him. He also tells her that Nolan is outside and he's leaving tomorrow, so now would be the opportunity to say anything that she wants to say. And to no one's surprise, Debbie is very upset with Nolan for dragging her boys out to space and getting Oliver hurt. And I'd actually like to take a minute to talk about this scene. We, as the viewer, have seen all season long how Nolan has done everything he is physically and emotionally capable of to try and do better. And we've seen him learn what that really means and grow as a person. Now, I want to preface this. I'm not saying he will ever fully earn forgiveness for all of his transgressions and crimes, but making amends is ultimately a two-way street. If the person on the other side of the street doesn't even afford you an opportunity to just show how you've changed and show what you've done, I personally don't think that's very rational. You never have to forgive someone, but demonizing them when they are as clear as day trying to improve or make amends is just a little irrational, in my opinion. Debbie has every right to be mad at Nolan, and Nolan realizes this. And instead, he pivots and makes the conversation about their sons, not him. Because it isn't about him, it's about her and them. This is a clear sign of emotional growth and understanding on Nolan's part, and Debbie is clearly affected when Nolan says that the boys would have done her proud if she had saw them. Nolan expresses how it broke his heart when Oliver got hurt, and to us, the viewer, most of us I imagine anyway, or maybe 60% of us, we believe him, because we saw how much they bonded when they were stranded waiting for Mark to heal. But Debbie doesn't know that, and as such, she just calls him heartless. One thing that remains consistent with Nolan is his difficulty in being told no. And this is exemplified when he swiftly gets in front of Debbie to continue defending himself. He makes some semblance of an impact with his words, but it's definitely going to be a very long time before that impact can become any larger. Continuing on with the homecoming though, Zoe also goes and sees her dad, who seemed to be doing a lot of understandable stress eating while she was away. Meanwhile, Mark finally gets to see Eve, and it looks as though she hasn't been doing a lot of superheroing lately. I mean, she did say she put Invincible ink on hold since Mark left, which, yeah, makes sense. There's no Invincible for Invincible ink. Mark expresses to her that he just doesn't feel okay and isn't sure how he's really doing. Hell, I don't know how I'm doing with all those Viltrumites on the loose. Eve points out how Mark told her that there aren't many Viltrumites left, and perhaps between Cecil and the Guardians and every other hero out there, and even the Coalition, maybe they could defeat them. But after what Mark saw, he is completely right when he said that it just wouldn't make a difference. Thrag would kill them all. But speaking of Cecil, all this time later, he is still trying to bring Rudy and Amanda back from the Flaxen dimension. But interdimensional physics isn't Sinclair's area of expertise, and after another
fuck up we've had this month,
they decide to throw in the towel. Might seem a little bit cold, but all their time and resources and money honestly would be better spent elsewhere. Like, yeah, it sucks that Rudy and Amanda are trapped there, but they gotta think about Earth first. And elsewhere in space, Alan is struggling with his new position as the new leader of the Coalition. The other members of the Council don't seem to really respect him and question if Nolan and his sons should even be left alive. They even go as far as reminding Alan what the Viltrumites did to him and his people. Alan, being the absolute legend that he is, defends Nolan and his sons and states clearly that once they find the Viltrumites, he'll decide what their next course of action will be. Let's hope he finds them soon. Back on Earth, Eve, Mark, Rick, and William. God, I'm still not used to his new VA. Why Invincible? Come on, please. Why you gotta break the continuity like this? It's killing me. But as Mark is telling his friends what happened out there, he turns the corner and sees carnage, death, and Anissa killing William. But not really. It's just another, day terror, I guess we'll call them. This is the second one, Mark. Maybe you should, like, I don't know, see someone about this. At least Rick is here to shed some light on this for William. He points out how Mark is still processing to whatever happened to him, and that he's seen that same look on Mark's face in his own mirror. And I think it is so cool that the show has drawn like a light comparison between Rick and Mark here. When Rick was processing what happened to him, he told William how he sometimes saw flashes of what Sinclair had done to him. Now, Mark is seeing flashes of what he fears would happen or could have happened. And speaking of people processing, Debbie is venting to Paul about her frustrations about how Oliver is still all the way out in space recovering. It's also revealed to us that the two broke up while the war was happening, but they did stay friends, because, they're mature and responsible adults. And Paul is just spitting absolute fiery hot truths in this scene. He's like, well, why don't you go see Oliver? Him being billions of miles away is not something that's ever stopped you before, Debbie. And he tells her right to her face, without any lick of fear, that aliens and superheroes and space and all that stuff is the world that she is a part of, whether she realizes it or not. And that is what a good friend does. Tell it exactly as it is. Even if these two might not have worked out as a couple, Paul has been an integral figure in Debbie's character arc for the last 2 seasons. His grounded but unapologetically optimistic outlooks have helped Debbie cope and heal, and most importantly, rediscover her own self-worth. I'm reminded of one of the dinner scenes from season 3. I don't remember exactly which episode it was, but Paul and Debbie were doing the dishes, and Paul is like, man, I can't measure up to what these superheroes are talking about, all these amazing lives that they save. And, Debbie's like, hey, don't worry about it. It's like, our lives are still meaningful. They're no less meaningful than theirs. That's what I'm reminded of in this scene. But speaking of self-worth and realizations, we finally get the conversation many of us have been waiting for. But before Mark can hear what Eve has to say, Mark has yet another day terror of Thrag killing Eve. That's 3 of those now, Mark. Starting to get a little worried for a multitude of reasons. But unsurprisingly, the crying fest ensues as Eve finally tells Mark that she was pregnant, and that she got an abortion while Mark was away. And apparently after that, her powers started working again. Okay, wait a second, hold on. Let's just back it up just for a second, because I'm a little confused here. The first instance we saw of Eve's powers acting even a little bit funny was directly after the conquest battle, after Eve reconstructed her body. Between that time and the start of season 4, it was what, a month? 2 months? I guess she could have been pregnant all that time without knowing or showing, but I don't know, it seems like just slightly inconsistent to me. That shot of Mark's mask in the pink sludge at the end of season 3 was an indicator that Eve rebuilding her body messed up with her powers somehow, right? That's how the entire scene read to me, but I guess I could have been wrong about it. Then again, that scene did happen during some segs, which could have been a subtle hint that Eve was pregnant. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. Either way, getting back to what's important here, the crying fest goes exactly as you'd think it would. Eve mentioned how she struggled, but she got through it on her own, and Mark doesn't know what to do as guilt begins to consume him, and the two just hold each other as this terrible secret is finally revealed between them, and they're given the chance to sort of cope together on an even playing field. We also get the long-awaited Nolan-Cecil confrontation. I really like that Cecil is afraid of Nolan in this scene and tells him that's close enough when Nolan takes a step toward him. Even though Cecil is one of the most powerful men in the world with so many resources at his disposal, he threw everything he had at Nolan and it wasn't enough. I'd be pretty scared too. Cecil's position as the GDA director puts him in a unique position where he never has to forgive Nolan or afford him the opportunity to show how he's changed. As Nolan expresses how he nearly died defending the galaxy, Cecil simply says,
"Nearly died 2,341 more times, and then we can talk."
Eee, ouch, that one probably hurts. As Nolan is about to set off back to Telestria, Debbie says that she's going with him. I guess she took Paul's advice to heart, and if there were ever a parent to blast across the stars for her kid, it would be Debbie Grayson. Unfortunately, Nolan will have to very awkwardly carry her up to the ship by hand since the ship can't land. And Mark's reaction is just perfect.
What just happened?
Even in this heartstring-pulling finale, this show still just finds a way to make me laugh at the most unexpected times. And just as Nolan leaves, conveniently, Donald arrives at the front door and we have the long-awaited Cecil and Mark confrontation. This is the one everyone's been waiting for. All of the memes of Mark confronting Cecil about Conquest have been such a highlight for me this season. But what the show actually did was magnitudes better. As Mark and Cecil are talking about how sideways things went out there, Mark has another terror, this time of Thrag killing Cecil. And just as Mark snaps back to reality, he urgently asks Cecil about something he mentioned earlier this season. Mark asks about the specialists Cecil offered for Mark to see in order to help him cope with all the trauma. Before, earlier in the season, Mark was all, I can handle myself. Now he's all, fuck, I need help. But in all seriousness, this scene was brilliant from start to finish. We all know Mark wouldn't ask Cecil for anything if he didn't have to. So the fact that he's asking so urgently now is a clear sign of how bad things are in Mark's head. Even Eve sees it and convinces Mark to go out for a flight to help clear his head. And as such, we get our traditional end-of-season flying montage, this time accompanied by the song Fragments of the Decade. But as Mark is flying and looking around, trying to clear his head, he has another terror of Thrag. At least, that's what he thought when he closed his eyes to try and make it go away. But when Mark opens his eyes again, Thrag is still there. He is real. He is truly there. Mark, of course, immediately goes for the attack, but Thrag pushes him off of him and tells him to stop. Thrag expresses to Mark how being the regent and the one person responsible for the survival of his people has not been an easy task. Now with their home gone, Earth will be their new home, and Thrag explains to Mark the new future of Earth. The Viltrumites will vanish into the shadows and live among humanity, work the job, wear the clothes, and most crucially, rebuild their population. So long as they are undisturbed, Thrag promises that he will not intervene or affect Earth in any way, not helping them and not harming them. But if Mark refuses these terms, Thrag and the Viltrumites will tear Earth in half. And what Thrag says next is rather ironic. Understandably, Mark gets very heated after all the Viltrumites have done, all the things they've destroyed and all the lives they've took. There's no way he could ever let such a thing like this happen. And as the horror flashes behind his eyes of just how much this planet has suffered, Mark agrees to Thrag's terms. Thrag flies away and comments how it's even more ironic that the one who destroyed their home has now become their savior in a way. Every time that Mark has faced a big bad, his dad, Conquest, Angstrom, his anger has always been the overriding emotion, always the strongest hand on the steering wheel, if you will. But this time, it's fear. Raw, pure fear rooted in the primal reason of survival. Quite the departure from the other season finales, isn't it? As Thrag is flying away though, Mark questions to himself, what has he done? But Thrag stops, turns around and tells him that he just saved the life of every living thing on this planet, and that he won't be hearing from him again. We get some wide shots and loud thuds of Mark flying just in the middle of nowhere, awestruck at what just happened. The credits roll, and we get one final scene. Thetis left a message for Alan in the case of an untimely death, and the message says that in the event that they fail to kill all the Viltrumites, he wants Alan to use the completed Scourge virus to finish the job. And he reveals to Alan it will also kill genetically similar species. Humans, for example. And Alan is left with just a look of bewilderment as the true credits roll. Oh, but there you have it, my friends. Invincible Season 4. Man, this one just hit different, didn't it? Thrag's presence in this final episode and this whole season was just utterly fantastic. He was this symbol of fear for Mark, who saw him around every corner. And when the real deal finally came face to face with him, Thrag was calm, collected, and I dare say respectful toward Mark. I am a little sad we didn't get to learn more about his backstory than I had hoped, but I guess that we'll have to wait for the next season, which has already been confirmed by Amazon. I don't know how many seasons are left of Invincible, and honestly, I don't care, so long as it eventually ends before it runs long enough to see itself become the villain, or the Viltrumite in this case. If I were to choose one word to describe this entire season, it would be terror. Eve was terrified when her powers stopped working and she found out she was pregnant. Nolan was terrified when he learned that there was an even worse version of the Scourge virus ready for deployment. Oliver was terrified when he saw Mark lose his cool as he just beat the crap out of Titan. And Mark was terrified when he realized that Thrag was unbeatable in his current state after he impaled Nolan. All of these characters we've come to love so much over these seasons were so scared and terrified this time around. And it only made all of us more invested in them. The memes, as usual, were an absolute delight to see and reference left and right. The Invincible fandom, while extremely goofy, is one of the better fandoms out there, if you ask me. You know, of course, we have the comic, you know, those few bad actor comic readers who ruin and spoil the whole thing for everybody else who hasn't read the comics, but aside from that, I think the Invincible fandom's like pretty fucking cool. And just because the season is over doesn't mean I'm done talking about Invincible just yet. Oh no. I have a few more videos planned for the coming weeks, and if you want to stick around and talk about this show a little bit longer before we lose our minds waiting for a whole nother year, please be sure to hit the like and sub button. I'd greatly appreciate that. And of course, if you really like the way I do things around here and you want to show me a little bit of extra support, please consider becoming a channel member or checking out the Patreon. Not only do you get access to a whole bunch of exclusive rewards like early video access, but you also directly support me in the process and literally help me keep this channel alive and keep my lights on and keep my internet going. I would really appreciate it if you'd check those out if you want to support me. But that is going to do it for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and yeah.
What just happened?